Okay, Podsters, this is it. This is your tipping point, your moment to take action or live with never knowing what could have been. We all have that thing that we know we are meant to do that scares us, that we're not sure we can do, and that we know we need a little help doing. My Do the Thing Fall Retreat is happening October 13th through 15th in where else? Cape Cod, in the tranquil seaside town of Truro, where I've hand selected a beach house for 9 like-minded women to get together and do the thing. You already know that there's a life waiting for you on the other side of this thing. And this powerful, intimate 2.5-day workshop is exactly what you need. If you don't do it now, you probably never will. Don't live with regret. Do the thing. Click the link, fill out the very brief application. Let's hop on a call because I want to make sure it's the right fit for you. Together, let's do the thing. Welcome to Unmute Yourself, the podcast. I'm Nancy Medoff, author, speaker, and coach.
And I'm Beth Knaus, creative copywriter and the owner of That's a Spade Copywriting Services. We are done being polite and ready to get real about confidence, boundaries, and self-respect, both personally and in the workplace.
Beth and I first met when we collaborated on the best-selling communication handbook for women, Unmute Yourself and Speak Up to Stand Out. Now we are amplifying our message and taking it on the road with Unmute Yourself, the podcast. Warning, there may be, no, who are we kidding, will be some adult content. We have a bullshit button and we're not afraid to use it.
So buckle up, buttercups, because here we go.
Okay. Hi, Beth.
Hey, Nance, how's it going?
So good. So good to see you. I haven't seen you in a couple weeks.
I know. It's been a little while. Been a little while.
So for those of you who don't know, we batch record our podcasts. And for those of you who might not know what batch recording is, I did not know what that was before I started my own business. So that's when you have like tasks and you batch them together. There's efficiencies in that. We have a mutual friend who will love that efficiency.
Yes.
So we batch our podcasts and we haven't seen each other in a few weeks. So it's nice to see you.
Yes. Yeah. Always good to be here.
Always good. Always good. We are into this podcast. So do you want to share the news?
Yeah.
With our podsters?
I don't have the exact number right here because it's going up by the minute.
Minutes.
We have gone over 1,000 total listens.
Boop, boop. What are we going to do when we hit 1 million? That's what I wanted to talk to you about. We never discussed that.
That's right. We have to discuss it when we hit 1 million. What happens?
Because that's a lot.
We're picking up the momentum.
I say we go to New York.
Okay. Right. We're going to New York and we're going on tour. Who's following?
Perfect. Perfect. Unmute Yourself, the podcast, live from NBC Studios.
Yes. And actually, I'm going to say something right here. I'm going to give Nancy a plug right now. So anybody who's local to us in the Boston area, on October 27th, there is a wonderful conference called the South Shore Women's Conference, and Nancy is a keynote speaker there. So she will be there speaking, and I will be there listening. So, yep, if you're going, come up to us, say hello, give us
please.
Tell us
for sure.
Podcast, without a doubt.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And some of what my keynote is about is going to be what we talk about today. But before we do that, we also wanted to give shout outs to the 9 countries that we are now being played in: Switzerland, Portugal, Hong Kong, UK, Canada, Germany, Australia, Iceland, and the United States. So over 20% of our listeners are from outside the US. As a former global sales exec, that brings me so much joy.
That's pretty cool. Over 20.
Love it.
And it's changing. It's changing constantly. So
It's changing. So for those of you outside the US, if there's a topic, and inside the US, if there's a topic that you would like to hear us talk about, shoot us a note, find us on Instagram or LinkedIn, and we will gladly talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yep.
Okay, great. Should we dive in?
Let's dive in.
We're diving. So today's episode is about limiting beliefs.
Oh, I hate that.
Oh, I love this one. I love this one. Um, we didn't really talk about how we were gonna how we were
Goodness,
gonna do this up.
let's just get in there.
Get
I
in
think
there.
you could ask many people and they would tell you, I don't have limiting beliefs. And I think it's because they're kind of layered,
Hmm,
and maybe below some other stuff. And until someone kind of says to you, well, you said or think this, why don't you say or think this instead?
right.
That's where the light bulb turns on. And you can start to think like, wow, I am not necessarily thinking about bigger ideas or big vision or possibility, or I'm really kind of holding myself back in this comfortable pattern. I think there's so many elements to limiting beliefs, where we get them from and why we hold on to them.
Totally agree. I would add that they're limiting, obviously. And they're also false. They're not true. They're not true. I just attended this workshop yesterday on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And one of the key tenets was there is no truth. There's only your truth and your truth and your truth and your truth. So they're not abnormal, but when they stand in your way, and as Beth mentioned, they're standing in your way, whether or not you think you have them or not, that's when they become a problem. That's when they become a problem.
Right.
So, because the other thing that people do is they take it further. So I've been thinking about this a lot because we decided we would make this a topic a couple weeks ago. I've been thinking about it. Then I was in this workshop, and then I was talking to some friends, and I was talking to somebody earlier today. So if you have your limiting beliefs, and I'd love your thoughts on this, Beth, then you find, do, and you find people that confirm those limiting beliefs. You behave in a way that confirms those limiting beliefs, and everything you do is then supporting your confirmation bias, which is seeking out data that will support your opinion. And everybody has it. It's natural. If you have a brain, you have bias. This is what one of the people at the workshop said yesterday, and I loved it. So you take everything around you to support this limiting belief. Thoughts on that, Beth?
Yeah, I think there's like a rationalization, right? Because you have this limiting belief, and in a sense, it's comfortable, right? Like, as much as we can say, oh, limiting beliefs are bad and everything else, I also think that people have them as like a shield, right? Well, I can only go this far, or I can only do this thing, and it's safe, right? But like you said, they're not real. It's like an illusion that you can walk through if you choose to see it that way. And I think when you surround yourself with other people, like you were just saying, you're also like, it's that belonging thing, right? Well, everybody else has these same sorts of beliefs.
Right.
So it must not be limiting. It's what everybody is doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that concept of saying, well, I'm going to step out of that and step beyond, there's that feeling of like, oh, is that, cocky? Is that arrogant? Is that, you know, fair to the other people? Kind of thing. I think it's a weird creeper kind of thing, limiting beliefs.
I love that you just brought up fear because I heard this on a podcast too. This term fog, have you heard the term fog? Not
Well,
as a weather term.
well, yeah, like brain fog or something like that, but something tells me you mean something else.
Yeah, so this is fear, obligation, or guilt.
Fair obligation or
So is it fear, is it obligation, or is it guilt? And if you think about the obligation and or the guilt, I had this epiphany when I heard this term, and it was about myself, and I'll get into that in a minute, but I was like, wow, that's a really good way to put it, because of course there's a fear, right? But you face your fear, you do it anyway. We've talked about that, and I'm not diminishing the power of fear, but that didn't resonate as much with me as did obligation or guilt. So, let's say you grew up, let's say you're the only child in your household that went to college. You grew up with a very working class family, and you go on to become a well-known heart surgeon or whatever, neurosurgeon. Is there guilt there? Is there obligation? Is there
Mm,
I don't know. I just think it's really interesting. I think if you look at people who come from nothing, I bet they had mixed feelings about leaving it behind. And that's a very, that's a
yeah.
polarizing example, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that is possible. And so I'm going to talk about some personal things here. So my dad, who I've talked about often here, grew up in a really lousy situation, was an alcoholic, got sober. So fortunate to have landed a job on the Long Island Railroad, which you literally could not sell your soul to get right now. It's a tough job to get. Great benefits, great pension, it's good money, everything about it. And at the time it was too, but he knew somebody, he got on the job, and it was the best thing that ever happened to him. And he was able to buy a home and support his family and have put steak on the table 3 days a week. And I think his mindset was, I'm really so fortunate, and I don't really want to draw attention to the fact that I had this really crappy life and probably should have continued on that way, but somehow I stepped in, you know what, and got this stuff, and I want to stay below the radar. I don't want to draw any attention to it. So that combined with, a lot of like AA philosophy, everything in our house was about gratitude. It wasn't a religious house, it was a house about gratitude and being grateful for what you had. But there was this underlying thing of, if you are really grateful for what you have, you do not need anything beyond that.
Do you
Right.
do you do you think that's true?
I don't think it's true, but I lived in that mindset for a
Mm.
long time. And I, like my kids, I'm like, go on, you do whatever you want. You can go off and do whatever you want. I remember my son saying, can I play on the Celtics? He loved basketball. And I said to him, listen, I don't make the decision at the end of the day. It's all about the demographic and who's competing. And if you do your best, who am I to say you can't be a Celtic? Right? Is it good to have a plan B with a goal like that? Yes.
Yes.
And that's
Right.
what I suggested. So, spoiler alert, we're hoping to go to medical school. We are not a Celtic, but it's not, I don't feel like it's my place to tell somebody what they can accomplish or not. I feel like, I wanted all my kids, they all go off, they all, you know, they make more money than I do. Amen. Share the wealth. Right? I want that for them, but I don't think that was always how it was. I think, and then I'll stop and let you chit chat for a minute. I think coming from, like, I was first generation in my family to have any level of college. And so I think when your family has been blue collar laborers, there's a pride in that, in the physical exertion and how hard it actually feels physically. And, how much you have to work to put a roof over your family's head. And then for them, does that have less value when your kid goes off to college and then gets a, more of a frou-frou job that's all about their passion and what they feel like? I'm sure my dad didn't grow up going, oh my God, my goal is to be a railroad conductor.
No, but his goal was to provide for his family, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, this is my head spinning. So, yes, I think we agree that it's what was modeled for you when you were younger,
Mhm.
which I don't think that's a cop out. Sometimes I say, you can blame your parents for everything, but at some point you have to take accountability for your own
Absolutely.
fate, right? But was it an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset? And I choose those words carefully because so I was raised probably middle class. I would call it middle class, maybe. Um, we did not have a lot of money in the bank. We had a nice house. We lived in a great town, but we didn't. So I was grateful for what we had. So fast forward, so I own my own business. You own your own business. There's all these $1 million clubs out there, right? This is how you're going to make $1 million in a year. This is how you're going to make $1 million in a year. $1 million, $1 million, $1 million. It was never on my radar. And I was trying to figure out, why is this not on my radar, right? Like, why wouldn't I want to make $1 million a year? I had zero interest in it until I was listening to these podcasts, and I was listening to this one person in particular. And I'm like, oh my God, I think it's part of this um, guilt. And stay with me here,
Mhm.
because I was not raised as a millionaire. I did not hang out with millionaires. I, I, it was just not part of who we were. My father worked very hard. He was a professional. He worked very hard. We always had food on the table. I think there's this guilt about, well, if I make $1 million, I'm going to leave that behind me. And is that fair? Like, if I make $1 million, well, what about my brothers, and what about my father, and what about my sister, and what there's just this guilt. I think it's guilt or shame. It might even be shame with, like your dad said, he doesn't want to draw attention to himself, right?
Mhm.
Why wouldn't he want people to know that he succeeded?
Right,
What, right?
right.
Same thing with this $1 million thing. And I don't know if I'm doing a good job explaining it. It just came to me that, oh my God, I don't want to be the only one. And I don't know, maybe my brother's making $1 million. I don't know. I don't want to be the only one, because that's disloyal. That's not what we do. We aren't millionaires. That's not who we are.
Right,
And it took a very long time for me to figure that out. I could never figure it out. So that's my thoughts on guilt.
right. Well, and I wonder, is there also like a fear under that? Like, if I go on and become that person, do I get kicked out of the tribe? Do I get kicked out of my family circle? Do they look at me like I don't belong? Forget about the guilt, but yeah, are they like, oh, well, you know, Nancy's over there with $1 million.
Right. Oh, people judge you based on your success,
Right.
100%, 100%. It's a very, very good point. Very good point.
I think it's
S-
very vulnerable when it's like your family or the people who are closest to you and you worry about them passing
mhm.
judgment.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you overcome that? So if you were coaching me, or if you were talking to me, and I said, I can't get over this mind block about the $1 million, making $1 million. And this could be anything, podsters, right? This could be being a VP. This could be owning my own business. This could be whatever. How do you get over that?
Mm, that's a really good question. How do you get over that?
So I have a couple thoughts while you're
Okay.
thinking, because I kind of threw that at you.
Yeah.
So you're in this box. So you have these beliefs, and they're limiting beliefs. You can change your beliefs anytime you want. You can replace your beliefs anytime you want. And again, confirmation bias will keep finding facts to support these beliefs. So what if you just threw out those beliefs and said, why not me?
Mhm.
Why can't I be a millionaire? Again, I'm using money just as an example. Believe me, there's many things I value in life more than money. Why can't I be a millionaire? Why can't I be a millionaire? Why shouldn't I be a millionaire? So the minute you see the box that you're putting yourself in, I don't make $1 million, you're outside the box. So when you get outside the box, then you can change your beliefs, and you can
Mhm.
blow them up. You can blow them up and
Mhm.
replace them with a different assumption, or replace them with a different belief. That to me is possibility, and that to me is transformational thinking. I think that's where you have the breakthrough.
Right. Yeah. I also think the issue is that if, you're worried about your family being like, "Oh, well, this is disloyal and she up leveled from us or he up leveled from us." There's a line there where you have to say, "That's not my shit. That's their
Mhm.
stuff." And maybe that means that they have some soul searching to do and reflection to do. And, if this is what I really want, do I want to live by someone else's wants? Or am I going to live by my wants because I'm capable?
Right. There's an expression, you may have heard it. What people think about you is none of your business.
Right.
I
Exactly.
love that. I love that, because that you'll never get anywhere if you worry about that. I mean, it's probably harder when it's your family, or either your family now or the family you grew up with. Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, you just have to decide, right?
Right. Yeah. It's true. But I think there's the realization, right, that there are people in our lives that we don't want to think think badly of us or judge us, and then finding out that that's the case, it takes a little while to deal with that. But at the same time, I love facts and feelings. You can't control how somebody reacts, but you can control what choices you want to take, right? Or what your beliefs are. And you have to focus on what you can control. And, do people change if I mean, this is our example, right? If they go from making 100K to $1 million, I'm sure there are some things that change. But do you change as your, core human? I would imagine not.
And what if those changes are for the better?
Right.
What
Exactly.
if when you make the $1 million, you give more to charity or you're more generous
Right.
with your whatever? Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. And like I said, I've been doing some research on this and it's actually a paradigm. So this is okay. So Podsters, this is big. It is scientifically proven that the left side of your brain, right? If you start thinking about what's possible instead of what's possible, the left side of your brain, your logical mind, now has something to contradict the assumption. So you're contradicting the assumption, it's quieted down, so it will stop censoring what's actually possible. So if you believe it's possible, that side of your brain says, oh, well, then I'm going to stop bringing in all this data to support what's not possible. And I'm going to start bringing in data to support what's possible. That's crazy. I mean, this is neuroscience and it's true.
Yeah.
Love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
In fact, I think that would be a pretty good thing for people to do after this podcast, is to maybe do some journaling or just plain old writing down about what is possible. What is
Well,
possible
yep.
moving
I love
forward.
it. Sorry. Did you want
That's
to finish?
okay.
Okay.
No, that was it.
So Beth's suggestion was journal, like what's the prompt? What is possible?
Yeah. Like, just to start that, what is possible, and start that process of retraining your brain. You know, just by saying it's possible doesn't mean tomorrow it happens.
Right.
It just
Right.
means that if it's possible, then you can at least be open to, if it is possible, what will it entail? Am I willing to start to take those steps?
Either consciously or subconsciously. So if you think it's possible, even subconsciously, maybe you'll seek out different people. Maybe you'll attend an event that you wouldn't have attended. Maybe you'll change your ideal client. Yeah, so this is a big part of what I'm going to do, what I'm going to talk about at the social conference for women. I have an exercise, and if you are attending the conference, I'm going to ask that you not do this until after the conference, because this is what we're going to be doing. Because this is something I did and it blew my mind. And I don't know if I told you, it's been on my social media. I did a journal exercise 5 years ago in 2018, and you literally drew out what your ideal life looked like. It was a picture. You drew pictures, and I did that. And then I didn't even think about it. I put it away. I didn't even bring the journal up again. I was going through some old things. It's 2022, almost 23. I pulled out the picture, and it is exactly the life that I'm living right now. Exactly. And at the conference, and if you're on my social media, if you look back through my Instagram, you'll see it. Here was the drawing, and I showed the little pencil sketch drawing. And then here were 3 photos that I had taken this year that 100% supported that's it. So think about the power of that, that I just drew this little sketch with stick figures, and I always have high heels and my little stick figures and long hair, with the little, so it happened. It is, if you had told me that, I never would have believed you. Like, what do you mean you can't? But it's not like I wrote it down and then said, okay, now it's out in the ether, it's going to happen. I started believing it was possible because I saw it and I saw what it looked like, and I started behaving as if it was possible. And because I behaved if it was like it was possible, it became possible.
Mhm.
How do you like that?
Nice. Yeah. I think that's good. I think you have to allow yourself to do that dreaming, right?
I love it. I
Yeah.
need to do it again, actually. I need to do it again. I
Yeah.
need to do
It's
it
kinda
again.
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So the journal prompt. The journal prompt is what is possible.
What is possible?
I love that. I like that. I'm going to do that. Um, what else? Anything else in the area of Limiting beliefs. Oh, I have something. Did you have something to add?
No, go ahead. You can go
Cool.
first.
So I think that if you look at somebody you admire, either a celebrity um, or somebody in your life, they are proof that it's possible. But like,
Mhm.
look at Oprah.
Mhm.
She was born incredibly poor. Can't think
Mhm.
of a better word. Um, she had to sleep on her porch, on her outside porch, because there was no space for her in the house. Totally illiterate. Her mother, excuse me, was totally illiterate. Named her wrong. I don't know if you know this. Her name was supposed to be Orpah, but her
Mhm.
mother spelled her name wrong on her birth certificate. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
Um, abused as a child, told she would never make it in newscasting, and now look at her.
Yep.
And she'll be the first one to say, of course I believed.
Right.
It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. So we have a note here and we didn't touch on it, so I want to bring it up. I think we worry about too, particularly as women, that ambition can be seen as bitchy. That when women appear as ambitious and going after what they want and shattering their limiting beliefs, that they can come across as aggressive. Not that there's anything wrong with aggression, because, well, that's not true. It seems aggressive, strong, overbearing. Like, I feel like these are the terms when you see a woman who is ambitious. Comments? I know you have something to say about that, Nancy.
Is it aggressive or is it assertive?
I
Right.
would assertive.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So I agree with that. I do agree with that. I also think, and this is because of some of the work that I do, some of it is on the women. And I know, let me explain. How are you being assertive? And so that's the question I would ask. Are you being assertive or are you being aggressive? There's a difference. So, I've been called both.
Mhm.
And I am both at different points. I would say as women, it's not fair, but it's true. When you are assertive, you have to be mindful that you are being judged 100%, and you're being judged differently than your male colleagues. Fair? No. True? Yes. So can you adapt? Yes. And should you adapt? Yes. Kamala Harris and the vice presidential debates. If she had been aggressive in the beginning, when she asked Mike Pence to stop interrupting her, that's all anybody would have remembered. But she wasn't. She was assertive. And then unfortunately, it was the third time she said it, which was when she got aggressive, and that's when he stopped. But I just think as women, we need to be mindful that you might think you're being assertive, but because you're not used to it, you're actually being aggressive. And if you think that might be a possibility, you should practice.
And I think aggression has an underlying layer that can sometimes present as desperate or emotional.
Totally. And hostile.
Yeah, hostile.
Yeah.
And those are all feelings and expressions that seem a little out of control. And that's the piece, right? We want to be in control.
I love that. I like that. So behave as if you're in control.
Right.
Behave measured and controlled. Yeah, that's great. It's great advice. It's great advice.
Thanks.
So we have the journal entry. I'm trying to think. You can do the 5-year thing if you're not going to the social conference for women. It's really simple. You just sit down with a blank piece of paper and you draw what your life will look like. Like I drew waves, I drew a house, like
Right.
that's what you do, and put it away and set a note to remind yourself 5 years from now. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yep.
All right. All right.
Okay.
And on that note, I think that's it.
I think that is it. So, listeners, we want you to hit us up on our social media platforms of LinkedIn and Instagram. We're both on there. Thanks for the shares and the follows that we've gotten to this point. Feel free to also direct message us if you want to give us some comments or you want to make a suggestion for a topic or any of that sort of stuff. Happy to respond and to connect with our wonderful Podsters around the world.
Around the world. Yeah, that's going to be my request, is if you have somebody that you think would benefit from the podcast, send it on over. Send it on over. We want to be global. We want to be, well, we're already global. I want to be in every country in the world where podcasts are streamed.
Right.
To clarify. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, cool. Well, we have another podcast episode coming up. Our next one, and sometimes we don't like to say what's coming next because sometimes we actually post them out of order, but I think we're okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So we talked about limiting beliefs and why not you. Once you shatter your limiting beliefs, you get to step into who you are. And that's being authentic. And that's what we're going to talk about on the next episode.
All right. Awesome.
Can't wait. See you then.
Bye.
Bye. That's a wrap on another episode of Unmute Yourself, the podcast. We hope you found value in today's podcast. We hope you were able to take a little time for yourself and perhaps think about how you're showing up.
And thank you for all of the great feedback we've been receiving. We'd love to hear more from you about what you think, the tactics you're using every day to speak up, and anything else you'd like to hear about on future episodes of Unmute Yourself, the podcast. You can contact us through our websites. Nancy can be found at nancymedoff.com, and Beth can be found at that'saspade.com. Or you can email us at unmuteyourselfthepodcast, all one word, @gmail.com.
We will see you next week, and until then, keep speaking up.